Is there any way that you could support the Prime Minister's deal?
No, there's not. And it's not just because of the regulations which Northern Ireland will be subject to with the backstop, but also the fact that we would have to treat the rest of the United Kingdom as a third country. We could not participate in any trade deals which the United Kingdom may enter into in the future. And we would find that there would be a border down the Irish Sea which would impede trade with our biggest trading partner, namely GB.
Okay, well, but there would be a difference in the application of EU single market rules in some parts of those. Are you not reassured by anything that is said from either side, the EU and the Westminster government, that it's very unlikely that the backstop ever comes into play?
No, in fact, we're more alarmed at what is coming out from the EU and especially from the Irish government, who have made it quite clear that they do not see this as some temporary arrangement or some insurance policy. But in fact, Leo Varadkar has said within the last 2 weeks that he sees this as the settled arrangement for the border between Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic, namely that Northern Ireland would have to be permanently treated differently than the rest of the United Kingdom when it comes to leaving the EU.
Well, keeping the Irish border open, the avoidance of security installation, I mean, that's a key part of the Good Friday Agreement. That has to remain under the terms of that agreement.
And ironically, the Irish government have now been preparing for a no-deal scenario. And in its document, preparing for a no-deal scenario where there would be no arrangements at all between the United Kingdom and the EU, they haven't mentioned anything about what they would do along the border, what hard infrastructure they would put along the border. In fact, they've been totally silent on it, yes. Which would confirm in our view that this has been a con trick all along.
Well, what Leo Varadkar said all along is that he didn't want to make a self-fulfilling prophecy, so he's very careful to say about what the Irish Republic would do in the event of a no-deal Brexit. But it's perfectly clear from what he's saying now that Ireland is preparing for no deal with the same level of seriousness as it is preparing for Theresa May's deal. Now, let's just talk for a moment about what no deal would mean for Northern Ireland. Michael Gove, the Environment Secretary, told farmers yesterday that told the Farmers' Conference yesterday about the level of tariffs that would be likely to apply to beef and to sheep, for example, in the event of a no-deal Brexit.
Well,
that would be very important and terrible indeed for farmers in Northern Ireland.
If anyone should be worried about the tariffs on beef and sheep, then it should be the Irish, because of course the United Kingdom are net importers of food. We import more food from the rest of the EU than we export to them. And so it would be farmers in the EU who would find themselves cut off from their main market in GB.
What
and
about
of course,
the livestock that go across the border to the Republic in order to be slaughtered? I mean, there's a crucial amount of trade that goes back.
Well, I mean, we have slaughterhouses in Northern Ireland, first of all. Secondly, if we were having huge, the kind of import duties that Michael Gove has talked about on food coming in from the EU, there'd be ample opportunities for import substitution. So Northern Ireland farmers could actually do quite well out of it by finding that they had easier access to the GB market and the UK market as a whole, as they replaced the food which was coming from Europe into GB. For all of those reasons, I think that what will happen at the end of the day is, even if we left with a no deal, it would be in Europe's interest to say, let's have a tariff-free arrangement and continue with what we have today.
Northern Ireland should be, whether it's farmers or business people, should be relaxed about no deal. That's
Totally relaxed. In fact, they should be more worried about this deal, because this deal is going to keep them tied to EU regulations. It's going to cut them off from the GB market, where we send 60% of our exports, and it's going to stop us participating in UK trade deals in the future.
We've talked to business figures in Northern Ireland who have an entirely different view to yours. And we talked to Bill Woolsey in November, who runs Bianco, the hotel and restaurant chain. He says this is a deal, Theresa May's deal, should be grabbed with both hands because it allows trade within the EU and frictionless trade with the UK. And he says politicians like you are totally at odds with what people actually need in Northern Ireland.
Well, I mean, first of all, it doesn't lead to frictionless trade with GB. And in fact, the Attorney General has made that quite clear in the legal opinion which he gave to the Cabinet, that there would be friction between and trade distortion between Northern Ireland and GB. And secondly, I find it particularly odd that Bill Woolsey should make that kind of prediction, because he has been one of the ones who has been asking for VAT to be reduced for the hospitality industry in Northern Ireland, which of course we wouldn't be able to do if we were still tied to the state aid rules as required under this withdrawal agreement.
Sammy